Jody's last slide there reminded me of a couple of shots Daniel took when he was over at Churchill Fellowship in America. So these yards of bees, and they had these highly electrified fences all the way around them. Anyone know why they have electric fences around beehives? Yeah. So this is just a start to doing some hive work, opening up a hive, and we're going to do that outside later. But it reminds me that even if you've requeened, you've got the good stock, you've got quiet hives. Mrs. Murphy's not hanging the clothes on the line next door. There's no kids. It's a perfect day. If you're wearing dark clothes, you're a bear. And even if you've smoked it right and everything, you will end up getting the hammering. So you've got to bear in mind, you get everything else right, you've still got to present yourself correctly. Okay, so basically, a few things, in addition to, with those pictures before that Jody was shown with the pollen, and you could see the eggs and all that, notice that they were all, it was a nice new foundation. It was nice new wax. It makes it easy to see what you're looking at. So that you can see what's going on where you've got that nice new wax. So basically, going to open a hive in a backyard, and this is the steps and I'll make the assumption that we're dealing with someone in a backyard in an urban environment, is that we want to be opening a hive when the conditions are right. So the problem is a lot of people work full time and you get to the weekend and you want to open your hive of bees, and the problem is that it's over 70% cloud cover, it's probably about 12 degrees, a southwesterly, it's not right for opening your hive. So the simple test, and we mentioned it before, lifting the back of your hive so you can feel the weight. And so over time, if it starts to get lighter and lighter, you know they're starting to go through their stores. So I suppose preparing yourself coming into the winter and trying to get your hive down to a nice, tidy, down into the brood nest, so it keeps it nice and snug and warm and tight. That's a really good move. But in the meantime, we're coming into spring now. We're into spring now. I want to open it. So we've got a good day. Like yesterday, I was at home, opened up my hive. So there was blue sky, so less than 70% cloud cover. It was 26, 27 degrees, so it was just perfect. About 10:30 in the morning is a really good time because the bees are busy. A lot of the field bees are out there madly. They were getting water, they were getting pollen, they were getting nectar. So immediately, as soon as I open the hive, there's less bees in there, but there's a lot of activity. So if I smoke them and I'm nice and gentle, they've got work to do too. They're not going to be too fussed by what I'm doing if I'm nice and gentle. So basically, and we'll see this outside, is I light my smoker, I've got it going, put on your hand, it's nice and cool. If the smoke looks blue, it's too hot. So, and you'll stir the bees up, you'll singe their wings as well. So nice and cool. Give them a bit of a smoke at the front. Give them a bit of a smoke under the lid if you want. Just a side step from this, when you go to place your hive, if you're in a backyard, think about the operation we're about to do. So wherever you put your hive, and we talk about, not cutting into a flight path, and so the bees go right up a fence, and so get the flight path right up there. Think about these operations of where your box is. If you've got it right up against a fence, and this box is full of honey, you don't want to go breaking your back. You want to be thinking about how you're going to do what you're going to do without banging the bees around and hurting yourself. So anyway, we've smoked it. We've put the lid just to the side. Don't put everything behind you so it's awkward and spinning around. You don't want to be dropping bees there, then walking back and stepping on bees. So everything's nice and fluid. It's just from here to there. These bees that are in the box here, any frames, if they're flying there or they're coming back, you're not blocking the entrance here, but they're all sort of, if those ones on there want to go back in the hive, they don't have to go around your back, or you don't end up with them all over your place. So we've got our bees in our top box here. What we do in the department too, is we want to make room in the hive. I'll take that off and use this bottom one here. We want to make room in the hive so we can move our frames around. So what we do is we'll smoke it. We'll take out the second frame and lift it out nice and slowly, and then we have a look and see if the queen's on there. You can't see the queen, you put it down on the frame down there, or just if there's an excluder on that, it'll be on there. Put that frame so those bees can move around get back into that box there, but our queen's still in the bottom. But that gives us room then with our hive tool to be able to move backwards and forwards and move the next frame across, lift it up, and you don't chance rolling the bees. So when they're really packed tight, you lift it up, you see the bees roll a bit. You don't want to roll a queen and squash her. So we've got the room to move them around. When we're doing our inspections for disease, and we've got a frame like that, nice new wax, nice and light. When we want to do that, we get the frame and we give it a quick shake like that. You get most of the bees off, and then we're outside. I try and get the sun to be coming over my shoulder, so I'm looking at the frame like that. I'm looking at an angle. So when I have it at an angle like that, I'm looking straight into the bottom of the cell. Remember, they point upwards a bit. So if you're looking for scale, if you're looking for slumped larvae, you're looking for something that's not right. We've learnt what's right. We're looking for something that's not right. You can see it straight like that. You see people holding it like that all over the place. All you need to do is just hold it like that. You can get the sun just coming in on an angle. If you're looking at the hive and you're looking for disease, just a shotgun pattern, sun over the shoulder there like that, really easy to see. Straight down like that, and you get the shine right into the hive. Does that make sense? So we talked about the placement of the hive into where we're going to inspect it. In your backyard too, or in an apiary, really important now. We're getting hotter. Well, we're getting hotter and hotter summers. Is when you go to do your hive placement as well. Think about where you're going to put it, where the shade's going to be in the afternoon. So around 3 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This goes for commercial beekeepers as well as hobby beekeepers. If you're going to put bees on a site somewhere and they're going to be there for the summer, think about what shade's there, about 2:30, 3. So, like with a box like this, and only recently, the last couple of years, we've had beekeepers who've had total meltdowns of hives. They've been in a spot where it's been incredibly hot. We've had day after day after day of hot weather. The bees have had to fly a fair way to get water too, and the whole thing has just melted down. So the placement like that, this will be a lot more effective outside to be able to do this. We'll look at the bees' behaviour too. Once you start opening a hive up, what they start doing as well. It's important to read your bees as well too. So you've opened your hive up. There's lots of bees here. It's starting to get a bit muggy in the afternoon. We've got a bit of a thunderstorm coming today, I think. And then the bees start putting their tails up, and they get a little bit of a pitch to it, and they're starting to sit up. So have anyone seen them when they put their tails up? Yep. What does it tell you? They've got an air conditioner here. So this is ballpark between 28 and 32 degrees all year round. If one of your kids comes in, and this is a nursery, so this isn't just the lounge room, this is a nursery where the babies are, and someone comes in and opens the door up and you've got a baby in a bassinet and all the cold air's coming in, all the hot air's coming in, what's mum going to do? So that's exactly what they're doing too. So you're upsetting, and then the problem is that where you have this sudden change in temperature, as Jodie talked about chalk brood. Well, how does chalk brood start? That sudden changes in this control system that they've got. So read your bees, and if their tail goes up, you may not know. Humans are pretty stupid, really, when it comes to noticing little changes in temperature. But insects are very, very, very sensitive to it. So if all of a sudden their behaviour changes, look around and have a think about what's happening. At that point, I'd be going, I don't want to get a caning, I don't want to get a hammering, but I'm doing damage to my bees. So then I'd be packing it up. You'll see often, particularly amongst commercial beekeepers, a whole lot of bees will go into the lid and gentle movements. You want to, there's always a chance, or just in case the queen has gone into that lid, that you tap them in front and get them out of the lid onto the ground in front of the hive, and they can just walk back in the entrance. Commercial beekeepers and people who've got quite a few hives, they belt it on the ground. You don't need to do that. It's just knocking the bees around. You don't need to do it. So nice and gentle habits. And if we always go about doing it like this, you'll be able to pack your hive up and then walk away within 5 minutes. There'll be bees all around the place. Within about 5 minutes, the bees have settled right back down. The person just over the fence won't know you've been doing that. The kids, even someone in your backyard, someone could be sitting in a chair and watching you. But if you're hard on the bees and you stir them up, other people get stung. There's really, I think the rest of what we're going to do with this then, we'll be doing this outside later on. Has anyone got any questions about that stage of it?
What was the temperature you said is in the hive most of the time?
Between 28 and 32. Jodie's probably, I don't know, in your study, some of your work, you've been taking temperatures of hives over some of it, no?
I don't have that data.
Yeah, look, it's between 28 and 32. Some reading material, some references will say 32. Some will say between 28 and 31. So, but around, it's a narrow slot, and it stays like that. So on a frosty day, if it's a cold day, and you open a hive up, you open the lid to the back there, and you've got a double hive full of bees, you'll feel warm air coming out of the hive, and within about 15 seconds, you'll have about 30 bees at your hand. And they'll be telling you to close it because you're wrecking the heating. But they'll be telling you in a way that you won't forget. Yeah, insects are very, very sensitive to any little change.
You said open it around about 10 o'clock in the morning. I thought opening it in the afternoon was better because there were more of them out and about.
Look, on a day like yesterday, well, going by yesterday, it was about 27 degrees. We've got a lot of stuff flowering at home. The bees are already starting to get water because it's been quite warm. So I'm in the northeast of Victoria. But in Melbourne, you could leave it a little bit later, of course. Yeah, that was just yesterday as an example. But and there were a lot of bees. When you have this super on the lid at the front, just off to the front, you'd be surprised at how many bees then actually come back to that from the field. They get there and they're sort of looking like, hang on, the house has changed a little bit. It's amazing how many are actually out in transit, coming backwards and forwards.
What would be the starting temperature when you think you could open up the hive for an inspection, like 15 degrees, 20 degrees?
Oh, look, when we're around almonds up in the northwest, we wouldn't open a hive unless it was well above 16, and you can pick when it'd be okay, because if there's bees streaming in and out of a box, it's warm enough for the bees to fly and they're working really hard. It's fine, but again, like when we're doing that work up in the almonds, we see a hive that's got heaps of bees going in and out. It's a heavy box. It's really active. We don't need to be looking inside it anyway because it's of no risk to any other beekeeper. But certainly, I would look for the warm. If we've got a weekend coming up and I've got the whole weekend, I'd be looking at the best, most optimal day over that time.
Yeah, because too hot's bad as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and so when we're looking at really hot weather and bees are carting a lot of water, industry and a number of people have often asked why we can't get a permit to light a smoker on a total fire ban, and I would always say, why would you be wanting to open a box of bees in a total fire ban? When you're getting to extreme weather, you're getting to high fire danger. Using a smoke is a risk, but when you're getting a total fire ban, you're looking at a really hot day. I wouldn't be opening the bees. They've got an air conditioner. Most of their time is going to be dedicated in the afternoon to either carting water, fanning, getting that water, getting that evaporative cooling system going. You go and take that lid off or that box off and you've just stuffed it up again. So it means that you've broken down that temperature regime, that little slot that they've got. So some people talk about putting a little match at the back of the lid to let the air vent through. They've got their own system. It's still like having a cooler at home, but I'll leave the door open anyway. It's pointless. They have a system. Some beekeepers are questions often asked, should I have vents in the lids of my hives? Some beekeepers do, some beekeepers don't. This one's got vents. If the bees don't want vents in their hive, they will block them up. If you put a stick at the back there and they block the vents up, you're only undoing their work. So they're a highly, they communicate well. They're a very organised system. We only need to do tiny little things to muck that up.
So it's best to have vents and let them make the choice.
Pardon?
So it's best to have vents and let them make the choice.
Your call. I've got hives with fence, I've got hives without fence. There's no difference between A, B and C and D. They all seem to go okay. In the winter time, if you've got vents, you'll find that some hives will block them right up. You'll find another hive beside it will be a wetter hive, more condensation, and another one. They're very, very much individual. Each hive's quite individual in the way it's operating, but if they want to block holes up, they will.
So what about the other roofs that sort of peaked? What's your thoughts on that? And this one out there, it's got like a little bit of chamber on the inside.
Like the top bar. I haven't seen it out there.
It's a pitch roof.
I'll be honest, if bees find a hollow tree and it's been eaten out by white ants, so it might be that round and it might go from way up there all the way down to the bottom, the bees will find a way of, they'll draw out comb, and then when they go out and they'll have more and more comb in it. Bees are happy with, they're happy with any vessel. If they can make and get their right bee space for all their comb, they're happy with it. Behind weatherboards, in houses. So what it looks like on the outside, it's aesthetics to us, but they don't care.
What about placement of water? I've got four or five beehives now. I'm looking at putting in some more water sources around them. I was reading not to have them closer than 3 metres or closer than 5 metres. I'm getting really confused about just how close I should be putting in a dam.
It's a good question. Bees don't walk from the entrance. They won't walk to the water, grab the water and walk back. They need to fly, be able to hover around, find a good landing spot, get the water up, and then orientate themselves and then go straight back there. If you've got a beehive in a backyard, your bees over here. You've got actually in your little reference bags that you'll get at the end of the day. You've got a copy of the Code of Practice for Beekeeping. It talks about placement away from a fence, but also orientation so the flight path is pushed straight up. So if you're trying to push your flight path straight up, it's no good having your water right here. You can have your water on the other side of your yard, as long as it's somewhere where there's floating stuff in it, and a volume of water that's not going to evaporate. If you've got a day that's our top day last year in Rutherglen was 44.7 in January. You want enough water that you can have 2 or 3 days like that, and it's not going to all disappear. If it evaporates, the bees will find an alternative source. Then you'll refill that water. They won't go to it because they've got an alternative source. If it's your neighbour's pool, you won't be having drinks on Friday with your neighbour anymore.
So how long does it take the bees to work out there's a new source close by?
When you move bees into a backyard, it's best to have your water source there already existing. If you put the water source up, your bees are already there. They're already getting water. And then you put the water source there because, you're starting to feel warm. It won't matter to them. They've already found somewhere.
So your message there is when you place your water before summer, in like winter time, and so the bees come into that hot season knowing that the water's there, they haven't locked onto something else.
So if I put in a water source and move my hive back in there, should be right.
Yeah, you think that's a little hive away from the back.
Yeah.
They do like if you've got a little bit of a lawn area, don't put it right in under a bush. It's got to be enough area where they can come in from, if they can come in from any direction, because once they get water, they'll come up, they'll move around a bit, and then they'll go straight back to the hive. So when they come to orientate themselves to water too, they've got to find a landing spot where they're not going to drown. So they like to sort of mill around a bit of a water hole. Once they've got their spot they've been to once or twice, they'll pretty well go straight to it. Pardon?
Watering at the hive entrance?
Well, I've got some hives that are wide right across, and I've got some that just have a little wooden toggle turn door. It doesn't seem to make a great deal of difference, except a couple that I've got that have got the smaller entrance. They tend to beard the front of the hive on a hot day quicker than the ones with the wider entrance. That's about the only difference between the two.
But if we talk about watering them at the hive,
Oh, sorry.
actually slip the water into the hive so they don't have to leave for it.
Yeah, I would say it's like kind of feeding honey back into a hive, It's a good question, but I would say with water, why would you bother doing that? Because, and think about how bees forage. They need to forage and they communicate about how distance and things like that. So, they can communicate, ironically, they can communicate more effectively about stuff that's further away to the hive than what right close to the hive.
I just do that because the neighbors got a pool.
Yeah, and it's a huge issue, you know, the whole water thing in suburban areas is a huge issue for us. Get a lot of calls from councils and beekeepers and concerned citizens about bees. So you really need to provide water to your bees.
I'm just interested in vented bottom boards.
Yep.
What your thoughts are on them. If there's any advantages or not.
They work well with mites, because the mites will fall through.
We don't have mites.
When they get here.
Well, you used to see a lot of vented bottoms, particularly old wooden ones. There was a wooden style. There used to be a lot of those in industry, but you don't see them anywhere near the frequency. It was a style that beekeepers used to have, but they seem to have gone more to a straight box. There's some people with making different sorts of bottom boards and all that, but in the end, because say bees, whether they're in something that's aesthetically with a practical like this that we can use for an industrial reason, or whether they're in a hollow tree, it doesn't seem to bother the bees. We don't have varroa here, so I won't make a comment about whether they'd be better for varroa control or whatever, because it's. I'm happy to throw that open to the other panel here, but we don't have varroa here, so yeah, not.
What about in the case of small hive beetle?
Small hive beetle, actually, small hive beetle, if you've got strong hives, small hive beetle isn't an issue. If you're maintaining, if that's a double 8 full of bees, small hive beetle are not an issue. A couple of things you can do is you can have a mat on the top of your hive, on top of the top frames. If you get a piece of linoleum, the linoleum they make now has got a white fibrous type material underneath it. If you want to keep away from chemicals and using Apithor or any of the applications that they have, or the Beetle trap, which is only olive oil, it's not chemical. But if another mechanical way is just to put one of those lino pads on, or mats on the top with the fibrous part facing down. The beetles, when they go into a hive the first time, it's a strong hive, they've got to hide somewhere. And if it's good material like this, not old broken frames, they'll go straight up to the top. They'll get under that mat and they get tangled up in the white fibrous thing and die there. You can take the vinyl mat out, throw it in a washing machine, give it a wash, fluffs it up again and put it back on the top. I've seen people use, Wetex, blue chucks. If you put chucks on top of the frames in a really strong hive, you'll find that the bees will grab the chucks, they'll drag it down through the frames, and you'll start seeing them dragging the chucks out the front. It's quite remarkable. It's remarkable. But if they don't want it there, it will go. Once they get it sort of halfway down through between the frames, they'll start to tear it up into parts. But you'll actually see bees tangled up in it, and yeah.
I'll make a statement. One of the most important thing is that the hive, as a hive component, you need removable frames. Okay, that's a requirement under the Act, and there's real good reason for that. So you can, and we can inspect for disease. So regardless of what your box is, I mean, we've seen the most healthiest disease-free bees in the most crappiest boxes that would fall apart if you pick it up. And on the other side of that, we've seen the most beautiful, ornate boxes that probably spend more money on the boxes in their own house, but the bees are diseased. So the more important thing is you need removable frames for disease inspection. Different types of hives are out there, removable frames are applied.
Good point, Daniel. Where we talk about removable frames for the purposes of that brood inspection, there's a number of different styles of beekeeping. One's called top bar hive keeping, where it's just top bar and the frame, because the hive body itself is shaped like that. You'll get a V of comb underneath it. It's still legal because they're removable frames. Some beekeepers are saying, well, it should be banned, but we don't want beekeepers to go underground and go, well, we want to keep it this way so we won't register. We want to know anyone who's keeping bees, so if we have an exotic disease outbreak, exotics we'll be talking about later on, is that we want to know where they are. So the thing is about removable frames is whether it's top bar or natural beekeeping or Langstroth, if I've only got 4 frames in this box and it's a strong hive, the bees are going to chock that right out with another 4 or 5 frames of correct bee space, which I can't pick up. So even if you're a beekeeper keeping bees in a normal box like that, if they're not full of frames, it's a boxed hive and I can't check for disease. So it's splitting hairs as to the style you like of beekeeping, but the main thing is we can pick it up and take them out.
I've just got another question on the water issue. After bees have overwintered, will they go back to the source of water that they had the previous season, or will they just find another source for that next season that might be different from the previous?
They may find another source. They may, if you put another source that's closer to them, or they'll go to that. They will. The 3 things about the water source is the bees will only go to water when they need the water. Once they've locked themselves onto water, they will remain on that source of water until they don't need the water or the water's gone. If the water finishes, then they'll find another alternative source. And they do like slightly tepid water. So if you've got like a bore water or a dripping tap, you know, you've got that, a slow dripping tap is, particularly if it's out of an old, or part of the system's an old galvanised system, the bees really like that. And they'll tend to drink the water not from the tap, but the grass, the drip spot on the ground around it. In saying that, that's why pools are really popular, because chlorine makes water tepid. Chlorine in itself is a salty type of thing, and you've got your salt pools as well. So, and our issues with pools, and that, as Daniel touched on before, that has started in Melbourne. It's probably the worst, and the other place is where we have commercial beekeepers or semi-commercial beekeepers dropping a load of bees at a location, and there's a dam way down the road somewhere, but the beekeeper hasn't supplied water, and there's a horse trough on the palm there, and then because the bees are at it all day, and then horses can't get to the water for most of the day because they're getting stung around the muzzle. So that causes, and that's where, and we'll look in your reference book in the code, that's where our placement of our hive and what we think about beyond our hive is important.
Some bees prefer, when you're saying about swimming pools, they prefer the salt in the water, do they, because of the chlorine and that sort of thing? So is that what they're attracted to?
It's slightly tepid. I don't know why, but they tend to like that. Dam water, they'll line up. I think the thing about dam water is they'll actually go to where there's sand, where the wet sand is, and they like to get water from there. It's easier to get water from wet sand or right at the edge than to go to a vessel that's just got water. And so you need to have lots of floating stuff, shade cloth. Shade cloth's good. They can get on that and they can just suck it up from the shade cloth itself. So when we talk about floating stuff in water, you've got to make it as easy as possible for the bees to be able to get there and walk all over it.
Just with regards to retraining a hive, you've got a situation with this gentleman up the back where you have a neighbour with a pool and they're using that as a source. How do you then change that? Midsummer, do you get them to drain their pool and put another source in, with a 6-pack or maybe a carton of beer? What do you do in that situation?
That's a good question.
I hope it's a paddling pool.
That's a very good question. The first thing I would have in mind, if I'm in Melbourne and I've got bees and they're going to my neighbour's pool, the first thing I think you need to address is how happy do you want to be in your neighbourhood? I know I'm a beekeeper. I'm registered. I'm legally allowed to have these bees here. Not just my bees. There's other people's bees going into the next door's neighbour. I would take my bees away for the summer, get them away, or at least take them away for a few weeks, and then reintroduce them once I've established a good water supply in my backyard. That's if you have if you're keeping bees correctly, you should already have a water source. But if your bees have decided they've found a better water source or something more preferable, it is pointless trying to change their mind. It's not going to happen. Take your bees away for the sake of your mental health, your stress, and your neighbours, your relationship with your whole neighbourhood. Take them away, put them in someone else's place or a paddock somewhere, and if there is a continuing where you bring them back and they still go back to the pool, you might need to look, maybe I do my beekeeping in summer, just down the road or in another paddock or something like that. You really do need to think about that and be reasonable about, even though it's legal to keep the bees, you need to be reasonable about what you can do in your backyard too.
So communication is really important. You need to communicate with your neighbour what you're doing. And so taking your bees away with the view to bringing them back is your best option. And often our experiences tell us when beekeepers do that, the neighbour still complains, you know. And then you turn around and you can suggest, well, perhaps they're not all my bees. Perhaps there are other bees in the neighbourhood, and there is. And there's feral colonies, so it's not. It lessens the burden on you and gives you a bit more of a rite of passage to bring your bees back. Okay.
And when the council comes to inspect, your bees aren't there anyway, so you're right.
Well, had an interesting one. I'll get you in a second. An interesting one where a neighbour's got 2 hives of bees. Bloke's got a pool. There's bees at the pool all the time. He's ringing up complaining. That's fine. And so look, the beekeeper's complying with the code and doing everything correctly. It's a civil matter between the 2 of them, and they need to come up and the beekeeper was to go, well, look, I'm going to move my bees away and let him know, as Daniel's saying. But then the complainer said, and his bees come into my house at night when I turn my lights on. And it turns out the bloke's got a hive of bees in the wall of his house. So, but when people see a white box in a backyard, it will straight away, half the street become anaphylactic, all their grandchildren, all the kids. So it's about being reasonable about your placement too of your hive. If you've got water and your bees are using the water, maybe you want to be a bit discreet about where your hive is as well. Yeah, think about, I suppose, it's nice to have bees on roofs of houses, but don't forget, once you put them on a roof of a house, half your street are anaphylactic. So you've got to think of. I mean, it'd be great to have an attic and sit up on, you know, fantastic, but it is about a perception there too. So.
What's the question? Distance from the hive to the water source. I've got about 1 kilometre between my dam and my hive, and I've got cattle troughs along the way too. Where will they go?
I would think once you get a hot day, they'll probably be using the cattle troughs quite a bit. The good thing about a trough is they can land on the concrete. Are they concrete troughs or plastic?
Some plastic, some concrete.
Actually, once we get into really hot weather, if you can get water closer than 1 kilometre to your hive, I'd be getting it closer. You'll see beekeepers out in the mallee and they'll be near a dam, but those dams evaporate and you'll see 44-gallon drums, half a dozen of them more. So 44 gallons, a lot of water, and lots of long sticks, just stacks and stacks of them standing up in it, and the bees are just landing on the sticks, walk down the sticks, fill up, walk back up and fly back to the hive. But they only have them from here to the back wall.
The lady up in the back was asking before about bees preferring salty water. One of the guys in our group mentioned that he had a grey water system coming down from his laundry, and at one point the pipe broke between where he was running the grey water into whatever container, and he noticed the bees were feeding at the grey water site where the pipe had broken, that they were going there in preference to fresh water.
Yep.
So it was water that was coming out of his laundry that had laundry detergent through it, and laundry detergent is quite salty.
Yeah, yeah.
So the bees were drinking there in preference to the fresh water he had out.
And you've got a break there and you've got that grass area or whatever, and it's just plenty of landing area too.
They
It's quite safe.
seem to prefer slightly dirty water in comparison.
It's the minerals that's in the water.
Yeah.
So
Phosphorus.
would you be better, I'm just thinking, if you've got a water supply and they've got that bait or a pool, would you be better for you to actually put some sort of chlorine or something in the water to bait them back towards your water supply? If there is an issue with that. Do you understand what I mean? So you've got a water supply, put some chlorine or whatever in it, so they're more likely to drink.
I tend to just, no, I wouldn't add anything into the water. I'd have my water supply there before I had my bees there. It's very hard to convince 30,000 women to do something they don't want to do, you know. A couple of other important things. We've opened our hive up and we're starting to get a few bees hanging around. If you start noticing bees hanging around, you've worked a hive here, you're on your second hive, and there's bees coming around, they're hanging around the lid, and the bees have got their legs hanging. They're robber bees. I would close my hive up at that point because you're starting to incite robbing, and robbing basically means that these bees that can smell the broken honey or broken comb or whatever, it's a lot easier for bees to go and get processed, packed away honey and take it back to their colony than get nectar and do the whole job. But when they grab honey from another hive, they could be taking American foul brood spores or other issues back to their hive. So if you see bees hanging around, like they're flying particularly at the backs of the lids or, you know, a little round a gap, and they've got their legs hanging, they're robbers. They're not from this hive here. They know that if they go on the entrance there, they're going to get killed. It'll be fight for the death, and they'll go. So, yeah, if you see them hanging like that, and not one or two, you're starting to get quite a few of them, I'd just wrap it up. I'd just close the hive up.
What do you mean by the legs hanging?
Robber bees have normal bees when they're coming in for landing, they've got their landing gear tucked up, and it's not until they get right down near the entrance here, their landing gear comes out. So, like in a plane. So, robber bees are looking for somewhere to alight, somewhere where they can get in. There mightn't be any guard bees up here. You know, they're looking for a crack, a little spot to get in. So they'll have two legs hanging at the back.
They go the same way in the entrance?
Yeah, well, if they come down to the entrance, you'll see that they'll have their legs hanging, but they won't get in there. If it's a strong hive, they won't get in. But yeah, once robbing starts, if you've got a number of hives, once robbing starts and they actually get an in on one of the hives and get a taste for honey, they'll want to start to rob. They'll try and rob all the hives.
Right, so rob a hive. You can clear out.
Once, if they... Well, they'll find a vulnerable hive, and if they find one that they can rob from, and when I say robbing, they'll actually go in, they'll uncap where there's honey that's capped, and they'll chew away the cap, they'll grab that honey, they'll fly back to that hive, spit it out, go back, and they'll just keep going until this hive's empty. What you'll find, a robbed out hive will have a whole lot of, if you can imagine it's dry wax flakes. There'll be a whole lot of it at the entrance. That's all the cappings that they've just ripped out, thrown, and then they've taken all the honey out.
So will it predispose robber bees to go back to the same hive, but will it also encourage them to go and rob other hives?
Yes, if there's other vulnerable hives there. And if hive over here is starting to rob, it incites this one to start doing the same thing too. They start breaking open the caps and starting to take honey out of this one, out of this hive here. Hive 2 are going to go, I can smell that. Like, they can smell the honey. They will go there too. And robber bees will be from all different hives, and they'll just keep... There's nothing there to stop them then. And they'll just keep going back. So if this hive's got AFB, that hive's got AFB, this hive's got AFB now. And that's what we see out in the field when we look at it, bigger disease jobs.
I've built Langstroth hives out of the beehive, the dummies or whatever they call it. And it's got a longer entrance board than what you've got there. But when it rains, that board gets wet.
Yeah.
And the bees are on their back and they're struggling to get out because of all their drawers out.
A couple of things, and when we look at site placement too, if you can find a spot, if you can get a slight upward tilt on your hive, that helps. If we've got big thunderstorms, even though I've got the elevated and all that, if we've got really big thunderstorms in the northeast this time of year, it'll be dry, but if you're under one of those, you might get 20 mil of rain in half an hour. Get a couple of bricks or a stick or something and just stick it under the back of the hive and just tilts it forward. So even if there is a bit of a glut of water goes in, it'll run straight back out.
This just seems to sit there. I do have a small inclination, but I'll need to put a fair bit more on for that to run out, I think, because it just seems to sit on that board, you know.
Yeah. That can also be too, if you've got a spot where it can be damp a bit too, where if you don't get a lot of sunlight, or that morning sunlight that dries us, you'll see as the days get shorter, you start to get that damp sort of a look about a hive. That's where, again, your hive placement, you think about the winter time too. How much sunlight they're going to get, how damp is it going to be, and that's when you'll find you'll open up a hive and it'll be really wet under the lid, lots of condensation, but it's not able to dry, so it raises the humidity in the hive, and again, you're looking at things like your temperature, your chalk brood, issues like that. I think with a stationary hive in a backyard too, we've got it here in a spot. If you think about it a little bit to the side, is maybe I could have 2 places in my backyard for my one hive of bees in summertime. This is the best spot for it. And then once we get, you know, say March, Anzac Day, I'll take my hive away down to my kid's place or my brother's place or something, only 3 k's away, put it in their backyard for 2 weeks, and then you take it back to your place. This is my winter spot for my hive. And you look at your backyard and look at the way you can work it with your bees.
Thank you, Joe.